to the Breakfast Show on Faith FM. Did you just say that in Pyongyang is a top of 33 degrees and snowing?
It was just 3 degrees. I was so used to saying 30 with all the other ones.
That would be awesome to have like 33 degrees and snowing. Like
3 degrees and snowing.
Okay, 3 degrees and snowing. All right.
You had to pull me out.
Yes, if we have someone complaining from the North Korean government.
I think they will.
I don't know. You never know.
I mean,
maybe they are spying on your communications.
Don't come at me, bro.
Well, we are going to be talking about a bunch of interesting things happening. One is some interesting things that are being happening between Iran and Azerbaijan. There are some very interesting dynamics, and sometimes I kind of like when countries, they sometimes behave like people, like individual people.
Sometimes, all the time.
Yes. So we're going to be looking into that, what's happening there. That's an interesting story. We had a story that I wanted to see what you think about it, both of you ladies, with these Portuguese Catholic priest that just, is using electronic music to share the gospel with people. And I want to see what you find about it. This is a very interesting, curious case. Time allowing, we can also talk about the new hate speech laws that the Queensland government has passed yesterday.
Okay.
So these are some interesting dynamics there as well. Very interesting.
We have a question that's come through on the chat.
Have we? Okay.
It's from Sarah, and she says, "Good morning and happy preparation day at breakfast, team.
Thank you, Sarah.
Is there a devotional or book you would recommend that can be read on Good Friday during a family worship to open Sabbath? Thanks."
Oh, thank you very much. Look, you know what? There's so many of them. In our home, we have this book. It's called Little Curiosities, but this is geared towards children, and I would totally recommend except there's one problem.
Yeah.
It's in Portuguese.
Well,
so let me think here. There's so many. Look, sometimes I just like to read straight from the Bible with my family. Just choose a story, little passage. Ask the kids what they understand about it. Explain their the meaning. Another books that I like the Ellen White is an author that has a number of devotionals. You can get them online for free as well. And some of these devotionals are really good. I
start every day with one of her devotionals.
Do you like
one or 2 pages, because sometimes I go away for a week on a camp and then I miss a few days and then I'm like catching up for a while. So
I like her devotions. They're very deep as well. They really inspire me to kind of really think deeply.
Yeah.
But let us think here if there's what about you, Sen? Do you have any suggestions there?
Not off the top of my head. I was going to, once I've given this next quiz question, I was going to do a little bit of a dig around and see if I can send a link or two to Sarah.
Sorry, I sprung
maybe
you guys
Sarah,
with that.
you can send us a message and just let us know how old your children are, because that is definitely a factor.
Yes. But if you go to Better Books and Foods, the
Adventist Book Centre.
Yeah, I think it's called Better Books and Foods these days.
Well, that's ours here in Kurrambong.
Oh, okay.
But
Adventist Book Centre online.
Yes.
You can go there and you can look for devotionals.
Yeah.
They have a section there, and then you can see if there's anything there that suits your fancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's a great idea. Sometimes it's just good to just sit down, read like one page, and enjoy that and talk about it and pray. Yeah. We also were reminded here by Davo that I forgot to ask the second question answer from you, Sandy.
Yes.
So can you please reveal to us now?
Second answer and the third question.
Okay.
So the second answer was a fill in the blank. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you. And the answer was pray for those who mistreat you.
Yeah, pray for them. Pray, bless, do good.
Certainly not something you would want to do naturally.
No, very anti our human nature, but beautiful. Right. This is definitely at the heart of God.
A work of the Holy Spirit in your heart so that the Holy Spirit can then work in their heart.
That's right.
And producer Sandy, what is question number 3, please?
Question number 3, we are talking about one of Jacob's other sons. Which of his sons did he compare to a lion? Which of his sons did Jacob compare?
If you're listening to the show yesterday,
to a lion,
you would have no problem answering that question.
This one. Okay. So correct answers from Lindsay and Skafy. Which of his sons did Jacob compare to a lion? Genesis 49 verse 9. 0491064669. Send us your answers. Which of his sons did Jacob compare to a lion? 0491064669.
Okay. Lindsay, what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about love between a particular set of siblings.
Okay.
So on social media, there's a lady called Jessica Centers, and I just
Instagram?
on Instagram, and I just happened across her story just today. I'd never come across her before. I don't follow her, but I was just scrolling for a minute when I got in this morning. I was like, oh, this is the good story that we're going to do. So have you ever received a present that comes in like a large box, and then when you open the large box, there's like a slightly smaller box inside, and then you open that one, and then there's a slightly smaller box inside?
I haven't been the recipient of that, but I have seen it happening, and I find it amusing.
I remember my mum doing that one time when I was a kid, and she gave my dad like a nice watch, and it was like inside all these boxes, there was like rags in between them and everything, and finally there's this small box with a watch in it.
Wow, it only increases the expectation.
Yeah.
What is going to be?
What is it?
That is really cool.
Yeah. So the first video that I watched this morning, that there was this boy, he's just turned 17. So he's in year 12. He's about to go off to university soon. And his younger sister has presented him with a large box, with a smaller box inside, with a smaller box inside, with a smaller box inside. And down deep inside, there is a very small, like, ring box. And inside of the ring box, there's over $200 that the younger sister has put inside of this. Now, she has saved all like $218 that she was planning to put towards an iPhone for herself. And she's about 11 years old, and he's 17, so a much older brother. And she has gifted for his 17th birthday all 218 of her dollars that she saved somehow, that she didn't want to spend on herself, but she wanted to give it to her brother.
That's very cute.
It's very sweet.
And it's a lot of money for an 11-year-old.
Exactly. And he was like, why did you give me that? She's like, well, because you're about to go off to university soon, and I'm going to miss you. And she was crying, and they were hugging. It was so sweet.
Very sweet.
Now, that's not the end of the story.
I thought that you were going to say something like she came to the brother. I was actually going to give you $600, but I spent $400 in all of these boxes. So now there's only 218 left.
Oh, no. She did it very creatively, like just the way the boxes open. They kind of like flopped open each one. Anyway, it was really cool the way she did it. But that's not the end of the story. So that was the first video that I saw. It's blown up. There's like 23,000 views on it for quite a small creator online. And then I went and checked out the mum's Instagram page and just had a look around. Like, is this her kids, or is this some random kids that she's posting? Like, what is going on here? And then I noticed that she's posted another follow-up video to say, hey, you guys all really loved that first video of my daughter giving her older brother this money. But you know what? It didn't start there. This started 8 years prior. When he was 9 years old and she was about 2 or 3, it was time for him to spend his earnings of being a really good boy, and he's saved up all of his money over the past year of, you know, getting money for good behavior, essentially, is the way it come across. And instead of spending money on himself, he went out and bought chalk and bubbles and headbands and anything he could think of. With all of his money, he spent every single dollar on his younger sister, who was only a toddler, 2 or 3.
Baby sister.
And she loved it. And she, like, in the video of that one, it was like, is this all for me? And he's like, yeah, this is all for you. And he's putting the headband on his little sister, and he's showing her the chalk and the bubbles and whatever else he's got there. And it's so beautiful that the love that she's just shown for his 17th birthday didn't come out of nowhere. It's the love that he has given her 8 years ago, and he has modeled and he has shown to her. And you know what? Obviously, that has been modeled in the family overall, because where would he get that from? So the point that I really want to get here today is the fruit of the Spirit, which is kindness. We have 9 fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. One of those is kindness. And kindness is one that God has really been speaking to me about over the last few years, particularly. Now, I am a sinful human being, and I do not have a great deal of kindness that comes naturally, let me tell you. Mm-hmm. And so God has done a great deal of work in my life, and he called me to learn to be kind a few years ago. And I actually had to really study that and figure out what it means.
So what do you mean? So how would you define what kindness is?
Well, how would you describe it off the top of your head?
I would describe kindness is you are doing something good for someone else without being prompted, without expecting to have anything in return, just because.
Yeah, absolutely. Kindness is that part of that element, that facet of God's love, which is looking out for the goods and the needs of others, not focusing first and foremost on yourself and looking out for yourself. Both of these siblings could have spent that money on themselves. Like, they had purposes that they had planned to spend that money on other things. The little sister was saving money for herself for an iPhone, but then she chose instead to turn around and give it to her brother. So it is when we have the capacity to be spending our time and our energy upon ourselves for our own wants and desires and needs, or whatever it is, like to survive, to thrive, whatever it might look like. But instead, we choose to spend our time and our energy on looking out for the needs of somebody else, looking out for the wants of somebody else. It might be playing with a small child. I've just been hanging out with my friend who's got some toddlers, and my friend was sick yesterday, so I came and watched the kids while she was having a nap. So first of all, that's an act of kindness. I could have spent my time a different way. I could have done something for myself, but she needed the help. Her husband asked, hey, can you come and help watch the kids and give her a break? And I was like, absolutely. I love doing her dishes for her. And not only that, but when the small toddlers are coming in while I'm washing the dishes and I'm like focusing on doing the dishes, they're like pointing at a box of toys or a book and, indicating that they want me to play with them. And God has spoken to me years ago saying, even when a small child wants to play with you, play with the small child rather than just doing the thing that you want to do. So for a moment I said to the toddler, hey, just give me a second, I'll do the dishes. And then I thought to myself after like 10 seconds, no, I'm going to put this down right now and I'm going to play with the kid. They're only going to want it for a few minutes anyway. And then I can go back when they're, doing their own thing again. So looking out for the good and the needs of others, even if it's a small child, even if it is somebody else that you don't really know well, looking out for how can you show God's unconditional, unmerited grace and mercy and love to that person.
Amazing. Love it.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
Now it is time for our next quiz answer.
Next quiz answer. Which of his sons did Jacob compare to a lion? And it was Judah.
Yeah, it was.
Yes, it
Judah was like a lion's whelp.
Yes, a lion's cub.
Lion's cub. We spoke about that yesterday.
Yeah, we did.
When we were reviewing Judah's blessings. So thank you very much, Producer Sandy, for that one. If you're listening to this show, you would know the answer to that one.
Coming in on the chat for that too, which was
good
nice.
Revision.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about a few things here. One of them, I want to talk about a kind of curious situation that has happened between Iran and Azerbaijan.
Tell us. I'm keen.
When you look at the map of Iran, it kind of looks like a crescent moon shape.
Okay.
And then if you look at the map and the top left part of Iran, that's where the border with Azerbaijan is.
Okay.
And yesterday, so there's a thing. Iran and Azerbaijan have always been kind of friends.
Okay.
And kind of friends is because, I say kind of friends, they actually share a lot of things in common. They're both Shia Muslims,
okay.
And the Shias are the minority in the Muslim world as far as the big Muslim lines and denominations go. So that's one. Two, they share a border. Three is that there has been a lot of cooperation between the two countries in the past and visits. They have a friendly diplomatic relationship. However, they are always suspicious of each other. Iran is kind of suspicious of Azerbaijan because Azerbaijan is a pro-West, kind of a secular government.
Okay.
And Azerbaijan is suspicious of Iran because they were these fundamentalists and more radical form of Islam. And of course, they are world sponsors of terrorism and all these kinds of things. So they always cooperated. They all see themselves as friends. They tap themselves in the back. They say, we love you to each other. We're great friends. Our friendships are unbreakable and unshakable. But there's always like that little bit of suspicion that goes on. I do not know if you have people in your life like that you
keep at arm's length. That's
right. You don't necessarily trust them, but you keep at least a public appearance of, hey, everything's professional, friendly.
Yeah,
but I don't fully trust.
Yeah, no. Yes, I get that.
You get that?
I do.
Okay. So that's what's the situation. Now, yesterday, Azerbaijan has this exclave Do you know what an exclave is?
No idea.
Exclave is when your country has
It's not an enclave.
Yeah, not an enclave. Enclave is the opposite of an exclave. An exclave is when your country has a territory that is completely outside of your country and into someone else's territory.
Oh, okay, like a landlocked bit of like it's like
not necessarily landlocked, but
it's like cut off.
yeah. Imagine
somewhat.
like Australia. Imagine if Australia had a city in the United States that belonged to Australia, it's fully Australian law jurisdiction. That would be an exclave. Azerbaijan has one of that. It's not that far. I mean, Australian, America, but it is inside of Armenia.
I was looking at that. I was just like, what is this little patch of land that doesn't have a name for the country on it? I'm looking at the map on Google
Yeah,
Maps
it's
right
called
now.
Nakhchivan.
It's just south of Armenia and just
Exactly.
north of Iran.
North of Iran. And then
I was like, what is that?
so that's the Azerbaijani exclave of Nakhchivan. And yesterday,
That's what
what
it was called,
happened? Yes. So what happened is that Iran launched 4 Shahed type drones, like the little drones, that sound like a motorcycle, and they cause some big explosions. And 2 to 4 civilians have been injured. These drones went for the airport of Nakhchivan in that area. One of them actually fell next to a school. And the prime minister or the president of the president of Azerbaijan, he came in public. His name is Ilham Aliyev. He came to public in his Twitter account, and he said, "This is a moment of betrayal because just this morning, Iran called us asking for help. Say, hey, can you help us evacuate our staff from the Lebanon embassy?" And Azerbaijan said, "Yeah, sure, brother. Anything for you. We can totally help you with that. We have good relationships." And then a few hours later, there is these drones falling in the Azerbaijani territory. Actually, not Azerbaijani, called Azeri, in Azeri territory. How do you explain that, Lindsay? So they are kind of bewildered. They say, hey, we kind of always helped you. We kind of thought that, why are you attacking me? What's the purpose of that? What is the purpose? I mean, don't you already have enough enemies that you're now starting a new front by throwing some drones damaging civilian infrastructure? I mean, we're friends.
Right.
And guess what Iran's response was?
Actually, no, we're not, bro.
No?
Yeah.
He says, oh, it's not us at all.
That wasn't me.
That wasn't me. Yes, it's my drones. That has my name on them. But look, we have not launched these drones on you.
Have these drones been possessed by a different nation?
So that's what they're accusing. They're kind of saying this is an intrigue by Israel. They want to turn you against us. This is a false flag operation. They're pretending to be us, but it's not. It's our enemy. They're doing this. Please don't believe in me, bro. Don't believe in them.
I don't know. I don't think I buy that.
Would you buy that one? Look, it is definitely a hard one to buy. And the Azeri president said, look, so apologize. If it was you, look, apologize. It's kind of, all be good, just say that it was a mistake. I mean, if it was just one drone that fell off, you can probably say, yeah, it was electronic warfare or something. But 4 drones, they're kind of saying, I'm not too sure if I'm believing in you in this one.
That.
I'm not too sure if I'm believing that this is all intrigue of the opposition.
Yeah.
So that is an interesting story here coming
That is
from...
interesting. So I guess we'll see what happens as time goes on, or it'll just slip into time and nobody will remember it and we'll move on.
We'll see, because
have bigger fish to fry.
Azerbaijan, people are asking if Azerbaijan will be the first country in the region to actually retaliate against Iran. Because so far, all of the countries, I mean, Dubai has been hit with like hundreds and hundreds upon hundreds of drones and ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. They haven't retaliated yet. Saudi Arabia had...
Why is Dubai getting hit? I don't understand that.
So because they are allies with the United States.
Oh, okay, good, yeah.
Then Saudi Arabia, which is also not allied with the United States, the Iranians, they closed the Strait of Hormuz, which is blocking all of the export of oils, pretty much. Like, if you look at the map, there's always like a handful, 1 or 2 really brave or really crazy ships that are taking their chances and trying to cross.
Yeah.
But at the moment, that whole part of the globe is locked.
Yeah.
20% of the global exports of oil, but not only oil, fertilizer, a bunch of very important things go through that strait, and they're not coming. And one of the things that the Iranians did against the Saudi Arabians is that they actually put on fire one of the Saudi's greatest oil extracting facilities.
Oh, wow, okay.
The Saudis were really mad about it. They said they were going to retaliate, but they haven't yet. So nobody has retaliated against Iran. They're kind of saying, hey, U.S., Israel, are you seeing this? Do it. Like, stop it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all a very strange situation.
Sitting down between two burdens and not getting up to fight for themselves.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that. Or they're feeling, hey, we're not retaliating. Just stop doing us because, we will if you keep doing that.
It's odd.
Yeah. So it is a bit of an interesting / odd story. And what I was trying to make of this one here is, of course, this is countries here. We're not talking about people. But what they're experiencing is that sometimes brothers or people that you supposed to be having a good connection with, sometimes they might
fight and they punch each other.
Yeah. They might betray you.
They love each other a bit later, but they mostly
we'll see what's going to happen here. But that's a thing that not only people experience, but countries apparently experience that as well.
Well, there you go.
And then the other story that I found interesting, well, there's two stories here. One is we have the new speech hate laws in the state of Queensland.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that in Queensland, the hate speech laws have not been proposed by Labour government, as was the case with the federal attempt to create a hate speech law. It was by the Liberals.
Really?
Yes, and what they banned is from the river of the sea.
Oh, of
you
course.
cannot use that.
That kind of hate speech.
Yeah, and the other one, like globalize the Intifada. Those two. So look, if you talk about that, you're going to, this is going to be criminal persecution against you. Some people are praising them and say, yeah, that's great. This is going to definitely tackle anti-Semitism and hate speech in Queensland. Others saying this is an overreach because what if they just come up with a slightly different phrase?
Yeah.
And according to their law in Queensland, if they are going to prohibit other phrases from being spoken,
how far will that go, and who's that going to impact down?
And they have to apply that through the legislative process.
Yeah, whenever I hear about these types of things coming in, I'm like always a little bit squeamish. Like, how far is this going to go? How is this going to impact certain people?
And it's very hard.
That are very innocent down the track.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. So it is opening a bit of a can of worms, this one. Now, what I also found very interesting was the Labour's response. Because in the Queensland Parliament, the Liberals have a majority, a big majority. And the Labour MPs were complaining that this law has been advanced in the 11th hour. They didn't have enough time to talk about it, to talk about the repercussions that the Liberals are overreaching their power and stifling the democratic, speech and so on. And Labour actually voted against that law. And when they were asked, hey, why did you vote against that law? And said, because we are all for freedom of speech.
Really?
So found it very interesting because at a federal level, the Labour government was kind of championing the hate speech laws. But at a Queensland level, they did not want to support that. They were voting against, and now they were like all for freedom of speech.
Wow.
So
like, what do they believe, actually?
That's right. I'm confused now.
Like, they're talking out two sides of their mouth.
I'm thinking the same thing and say, hey, in one instance, you say one thing that you are, nobody's going to ever say that they are against freedom of speech. Okay. But in one way, you can see, no, we are for the social cohesion and unity and tackling hate speech. The other one said, no, we don't want to have anything to do. We just, it feels like being against just for the sake of being against.
It really does seem like they're just being aggravating.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
It's now time for our interview.
It is indeed, and we are privileged today to interview our friend Brad Moody with his recurring section here with apologetics with us. And Brad, welcome to the Breakfast Show. It's great to have you on board.
Thanks, team. It's good to be back.
Brad, I want to talk to you about a topic that a lot of people have curiosities about. There's so many different churches out there. There are thousands and thousands of different denominations. And sometimes people ask, okay, is that a true church? Is that a church that is actually the remnant of the original church that Jesus started back in Israel 2,000 years ago? And different churches will answer that differently, and they will point out to different things. But in particularly, I find it quite interesting how our Orthodox brothers and sisters, and Catholics to a certain degree, their defense is based on, hey, look, if there is a true church, it has to be us, because we have an interrupted line of apostolic succession.
Yeah.
All the leaders have been. We trace our origins back to Andrew or Peter. And so we know that, the line is continuing on. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that? What is the case that they make, and can we trust in that to make a decision in terms of what is the Bible, the church or the group of people that the Bible calls the remnant?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Joseph. So the first text that comes to mind regarding that is in Revelation chapter 12, where it talks about this faithful remnant. And it starts out by talking about this great conflict that's going to ensue after the apostles have all passed away and down through the ages. And it highlights this great controversy that's been going on, and that there is this faithful line, this group that are the faithful remnant throughout that historical period. And there, as like you've said, there are those who have claimed this supposed apostolic succession. In other words, that unbroken line of leadership of the church handed down from Peter to the popes throughout history, even to our time. And it's based largely upon Matthew chapter 16, where Simon Peter proclaims Jesus to be the Son of the living God in verse 16 to 18. And then Jesus says, "Blessed are you, for this has not been revealed to you by flesh and blood, but my Father in heaven is the one that has revealed this to you." And then he says to him, "You are Peter," and that word there in Greek is Petros, and he says, "Upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." And so people have assumed that because Petros is little rock, a little stone, they have assumed then that what this is suggesting is that Jesus is saying, because of your proclamation of me as the Son of the living God, I am going to establish my church upon you as its foundation, right? And what they fail to understand is that there is a contrast that Jesus is drawing out. He's actually saying that, because there's two words that are used there, that thou art Peter, being Petros, and then upon this rock, that second word rock is the word Petra, and there's a difference between those two words, one being little rock, being Peter, the other being large rock, or like a bedrock if you read into the original language. Exactly, a really big rock. As people have claimed that this implied that Peter was the first rock upon which Christ would build his church, and that the popes are considered infallible, and that this is just a succession of upon what was bestowed upon Peter in this first instance. But it's interesting to me, speaking of the fallibility issue, that in a couple of verses' time, we actually see Peter being rebuked for his fallibility by Jesus. You see, in verse 21 to 23, Jesus is talking to Peter and the rest of the disciples about how he's about to go to the cross, and Peter attempts to rebuke Jesus, suggesting that this is something that shouldn't happen to Jesus. And one of the strongest rebukes comes from Jesus' mouth, where he says to Peter, "Get thee behind me, Satan." So if Peter was so-called infallible, we have a significant problem here, where that's part of the qualification necessary to be one of the foundations of the church throughout history. And furthermore, all the apostles receive the keys to binding and loosing in the next couple of chapters. You may have heard the verse in Matthew 18, verse 18, that says, "Whatsoever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever you shall loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." And so they've suggested that this was something that was primarily given to Peter, but it's actually given to all of the apostles, the leaders of the church, and it's a ratification of Christ's decision more than it is about them having the capacity to excommunicate or to determine who or who shouldn't enter into the kingdom of heaven.
Okay,
but that's a whole other study. Go ahead.
Okay, let me play the advocate of the other side here. Let me push back on some of the arguments here, so see where we can land. You mentioned something about Peter first, and
yes,
because this is where some of the churches, definitely the Catholic Church will claim to their beginnings at Peter. Other Orthodox churches, they would point to different ones. For example, the Patriarch of Constantinople will point back. No, our lineage comes from Andrew. Peter's brothers.
Yes.
The Greek Orthodox Patriarchate in Jerusalem says, no, we are direct descent from James, the brother of Jesus. And in Alexandria, it's Mark the Evangelist. Antioch apparently is also Peter. But you also mentioned, so I wanted to kind of explore to you about, these other claims, because they're different from Peter. But then in terms of Peter, you also mentioned that one of the teachings of the Catholic Church is the papal infallibility. And you say, hey, but look, Peter failed and Jesus rebuked him.
Yes.
That the Bible never attributed to Peter any kind of infallibility. But what if I said to you, okay, but look, the papal infallibility doctrine in the Catholic Church, but they're also saying, hey, look, the Pope is infallible when he's writing an official letter, ex cathedra.
Yes.
And they're going to also say, not infallible in his like human, normal, everyday affairs.
Right.
We also say that when Peter wrote his epistle in the Bible, that was also infallible in terms that it was inspired by God. How would you respond to that comment, particularly, or to that pushback, particularly in terms of the papal infallibility doctrine?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question. I mean, we're talking here about when they're writing under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit versus when they're making, responses to circumstances, as Peter was in that situation with Jesus. And certainly, Peter himself, continuing his line of thought with this him being just a piece in the puzzle, not the chief cornerstone in his book. He says that everybody has the capacity to be one of these lively stones, and that Jesus is the chief cornerstone, right? But that's really what it comes down to. Whenever anything is built upon Jesus as the original and maintaining, balance with Jesus' doctrine and the doctrine of the scriptures in their originality, then it is in line with the infallibility of the scriptures. And this is why, I mean, you can take the scriptures as themselves as an example, where so many times there was documents that were put forward as a suggested inclusion into the canon of scripture, but they were disregarded because it failed to line up with the original text and original manuscripts. I'm not sure if that's making sense to you, but essentially we have the succession is based upon doctrinal fidelity more than it's based upon arbitrary a succession, if that makes sense.
Yes. Makes sense to me.
So God is the God who does not change. In Malachi chapter 3, he says, I am the Lord and I change not. And then in Hebrews chapter 13, he says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. The Bible is our only true infallible guide. And so we have to depend upon that. And if something comes out from somebody's mouth or from their pen that undermines scripture, we cannot trust it. The Bible says in Isaiah chapter 8 and verse 20, you may be familiar with the text, it says, to the law and to the testimony, referring to the scriptures as they were at that point in time, to the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it's because there is no light in them. Right, and this is how the Protestants came to the conclusion of sola scriptura. It was necessary to depend upon what was already established as direct revelation from God in order for us to be able to be sure that what we're currently studying or reading about is from Him continued. Because in numerous places in the New Testament we are warned by Jesus Himself and by His apostle writers that there is going to be deception that would come in that we would need to be wary of. And so my question to them would be, well, what do we depend upon to determine whether or not something is credible or not, or whether we have a true teacher representative or a false teacher? Because the Bible clearly says that there is going to be a falling away, as it says in the book of Thessalonians chapter 2. Okay, so my question would then be returning to that. Go ahead, sorry.
Yes. Look, so what you're telling me is, look, it does not matter if someone is claiming infallibility. If we are judging their writings against the Bible and they are in contradiction to the Bible, we should stay with the Bible. That's the sola scriptura principle of the Protestant Reformation that you're mentioning. But what if a person comes back to you and they say, okay, Brad, like you and I, for us who know, just like ordinary people, to create a new doctrine that is not based in the Bible, surely nobody should listen to us. But didn't Jesus say to Peter that whatever you bind on earth or whatever you made loose on earth is also going to be loosed in heaven? Isn't that Jesus giving the church authority to also legislate on things concerning spiritual things? Isn't that an implied authority that Jesus is giving, so that the tradition of the church should be respected as if it was the law of God?
Yeah, but you see, you have to come back to that original statement, even by Peter himself, as I was talking about in the first book that he wrote, the first letter that we have in chapter 2. He's talking about Jesus being the chief cornerstone. It still has to be built upon the same foundation. Yes, you can add to that picture, but it has to only add reflections to it. It cannot replace it or direct away from it. Does that make sense? It has to be based upon the same foundational element, which is Christ and the doctrine that came from him, as he brought clarity to all those Old Testament misunderstandings. It cannot take away or undermine what has already been established, because God is consistent with himself.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And look, another thing as well, kind of a moving camps here for a second, for the sake of the intellectual exercise here. I actually find very fascinating, whenever we are studying the Bible, to look at different opposing point of views and see which one will prevail in the light of the Bible. To me, 2 points stand out. One is that Jesus often downplays or talks about, hey, be weary of replacing the commandments of God by the traditions of man. Number one, many times, not one time, but many times Jesus made that warning. And then I'm also thinking about in Daniel chapter 7, when Daniel prophesied that it would come one point that there was going to be a power prophesying to be a Christian power, or a power that was under the direction of the one true God, but they would attempt to change the laws of God himself. Yes. Can you tell us a little bit more about that passage?
Oh, I'd love to dive deep into that one. We don't have time to cover the entirety of it.
But you're absolutely in a nutshell. What's that all about?
Yeah, essentially, this power would seek to rise. And Paul, once again, in that same passage in Thessalonians, actually highlights this power that would seek to oppose and exalt himself above all that is called God and that is worshipped. And we believe this to be the same power, the son of perdition, that will rise and oppose God, but claim to be a follower of God. And it reflects in the other place in Thessalonians that talks about the devil masquerading as an angel of light, coming in robes of light, or in places like in that same passage you were talking about in Mark, I believe it is, where it's talking about that's in Matthew, but where it says that there will be wolves coming in sheep's clothing, and we can expect that there's going to be an apostasy, and we need to be able to determine whether we're following the right truth as purported by the people that support it, or whether we are following an apostate. And the reality is that Revelation 12 contrasts Daniel as that prophetic concept by talking about those that maintain the commandments of God, as opposed to be getting caught up in the traditions of men, or caught up in man's doctrine. And this is really the two polar opposites. Mm-hmm. You have those that keep the commandments of God, and those that oppose the commandments of God or uphold the traditions of men and their teachings. And you'll see that the faithful few, or the faithful people that were steadfast in Acts chapter 2, were those that steadfastly followed the apostles' doctrine. And this is what it really comes down to. Do we follow a doctrine? Do we follow that which is based upon the foundation of the Bible and Jesus Christ himself? Or do we follow a chain of ordination, arbitrary bestowal of church leadership? And the book book of Revelation contrasts these two groups and says that those that are the faithful and those that are persecuted by the dragon and his followers are those that keep the commandments of God. It also talks about them having the testimony of Jesus Christ, which I'm not sure that we have the time to get into. But then in Revelation chapter 14, once again describing this last day group of people, the remnant church, it talks about them having patience as saints in Revelation 14, and also once again keeping the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus Christ. So certainly the commandments are in top of God's mind, referring to a couple of brief keynote statements in the book of Revelation as those that are faithful and those that are part of his remnant people. It's important to make that distinguishment, that distinguishing factor notable.
That is very interesting. So what you're saying is that if you're looking for that remnant church, we shouldn't be looking at apostolic succession, but we should looking towards faithfulness to the commandments of God. So I would include the 10 commandments there, and also the faithfulness of Jesus,
Absolutely.
combining both the grace of Jesus, but also the coherence with the revelations of God, the laws of God, because they are also obedient to the commandments. So
Exactly right.
So, all right. So, Brad, thank you so much for today.
Thanks for being a part of the Faith FM family. Join our community on Facebook or get in touch at 1-800-FAITH-FM.